All right, everybody. So we just got done with the excitement of dealing with f-stop. And so if you remember, if the f-stop controls the amount of light and visually controls how little or how much things are in focus, shutter speed is going to sort of control the motion. It's going to either blur motion or stop motion, and it's going to sort of be measured in duration. So if we use the f-stop scale to sort of deal with the aperture, we're going to use time or fractions of a second to deal with shutter speed. So I want to go through and I did like a Martha Stewart, Julia Child, Guy Fieri, like I pre-baked this thing because like who wants to sort of see me toss a ball perfectly for too many takes? I don't want to see it. So I just want to go through this and I want to talk a little bit about shutter speed, stopping motion, or blurring motion, okay? So if I'm out here and I'm sort of tossing this ball in front of the lens and I'm making photographs, right? If I'm out here clicking the camera, I'm tethered. I want to go through what that's going to sort of look like. So if you look at the screen now, you're going to see that I am at f1.8. So I'm all the way wide open and I've got a really fast shutter speed. I'm at 1/800th of a second. So boom, super fast, right? And so you can see that when I throw the ball, it stops mid-air. So if we go in and we look, you're going to sort of see that the ball, the motion of it has been stopped. And there's really no blur dealing with motion, right? Because we have like blur because of focus, but there's no motion blur. And so we're there at an 800th of a second. You can see at a 640th of a second that I've also stopped the motion. Or I'm a magician and can levitate things. I've stopped the motion with a fast shutter speed. So that really fast 640th of a second has stopped the motion. Now you can start to see that at 320th of a second, because this ball is moving so fast, and it's so close to the lens, I'm getting a slight amount of motion blur, but check out my hand. All the way through my hand and wrist, there is no blur whatsoever. It's perfectly in focus because the shutter speed has stopped the motion of my hand, and that hand's sort of been moving, right? We get down to a 200th, there's a little more motion blur on the ball because it's moving so fast. But for the most part, you can sort of see that we've stopped the motion of my hands. And then at 125th of a second, that's kind of the edge. And 125th of a second is a really important number. It's really, really important. You always want to be thinking to yourself, am I at 125th of a second or faster? Because if you're at 125th of a second or faster, you're not going to get any sort of shake from when you pick up your camera, right? Like if I pick up my camera and I'm making pictures at 125th of a second or faster, I'm gonna get no motion blur from blur that I have personally caused by like drinking too much coffee and making the picture, right? A 60th and slower, there's the chance of getting motion blur from being handheld. So at 125th of a second, you wanna be handheld, that's fine, but anything lower than that, you're gonna wanna set your camera either on a tripod or a table or something like that. Because you can start to see I'm getting some motion blur. And as I continue to toss the ball, at a 60th of a second, you can really see that blur starting to happen. At a 30th of a second, not only am I blurring my hand, but you can start to see that the ball, the shape of the ball has actually just become this sort of hot, yellow, acidy color that's sort of streaking. So let's go to a 15th of a second, an 1/8 of a second, a 1/4 of a second. At a 1/2 a second, you can start to see that the photograph is like kind of not even registering much of the motion. It's starting to really abstract it. It's starting to really blur it. There's a full second, 2.5 seconds. Like, you can't even see the ball being thrown up in the air, right? Like, you can sort of slightly see the green. If I were to darken this, oh, I lightened it. If I were to darken this, you might start to see it a little bit. But, you know, it becomes this sort of blurry mess, okay? And so I just want us to sort of realize that we can use this for creative effect, right? We can use this to sort of do really cool things. So by stopping motion or blurring motion, we're going to sort of have this really great ability to sort of unlock the unique characteristics that the camera can help us sort of visualize in the world. It's really amazing. I think so, anyway. So let's just remember, when we think about aperture or f-stop, we're thinking about the amount of light. How much light are we letting in? Just remember that when we're thinking about shutter speed, we're thinking about duration. How long are we letting light hit the sensor? When we think about f-stop or aperture, we're thinking about how much of that light am I letting? So how much amount versus or in conjunction with duration or how long, okay? That was actually pretty painless.